What is really the issue these days? Only looking to the past won't help. So the real issue, what is the real issue? The real issue is looking for itself. And mostly you. Der Ikel. Der Icaris, der Icaris, der Icaris, der Icaris, der Icar. Icar bist doch du, o Icar bleib doch du. Der Icar auf der Blotche, der sucht dich in Abibu. Icar bist doch du, o Icar bleib doch du. Der Icar auf der Blotche, der sucht dich in Abibu. Wandern in Nichtigkeit, weigern sich in Wichtigkeit, suchen sich in Deutlichkeit. Der Iker ist, der Iker ist, der Iker aber bleibt. Iker bist doch du, o Iker bleib doch du. Der Iker auf der Blotche, der sucht dich in Abibu. Iker bist doch du, o Iker bleib doch du. Der Iker auf der Blotche, der sucht dich.
Welcome, Shura Lipovsky, to our concert, the Summer in the White Stork Synagogue, a digital version 2021. It's a big honor. Thank you very much for wanting to be interviewed and to share your art. I tell you first in the beginning, it's really a big honor or a lot of fun for me because, we are two European Yiddish singers who meet now on stage in a way and have not really met properly before. And we work for years and years and promote this kind of songs, Yiddish as a language and this song tradition. So it's great fun to have you here, Shura. So listen, I just wanted to know, I read that you're from Den Haag, in the Netherlands. And do they speak Yiddish in Den Haag or what?
No, I didn't know anyone. I didn't know anyone who spoke Yiddish. And I really thought it was like Latin. So, no. My mother was friends with Hannah Milner, a woman who survived the war, and she published books in Yiddish, with Yiddish songs, but she didn't speak Yiddish herself. And from the moment I started to sing when I was 13 years old, I found a book on the piano and I fell in love with it right away. And I thought, this is songs with a heart and a soul that touches me very much, and it is me. But no, I didn't know anyone. And then only, I think, so I even auditioned with Yiddish songs in the conservatory because I said, this is my world. But of course, you can't do it professionally because I didn't know anyone who did it, aside from Hannah Milner. So, and then I auditioned with Yiddish songs and some Schubert. And so forth. So I was welcomed to the conservatory. And then only when I was 23 or 22, I gave a concert in Paris for a little intimate group of people with Yitzhak Nibursky in it and with Jacques Robert and a few wonderful people from Paris. And then I suddenly heard people speak the language. So I was in total shock. And I went up to them and I spoke my first few lines, composing it quickly from a song. And then I understood I have to learn it. Fantastic. So then I came back to Holland. And then very soon after, which is very interesting, my life has always been a sort of, in that sense, maybe magical, one can say. From the moment I realized I have to learn it, a few weeks later, I get a call where I would like to contribute to a second generation Yiddish concert, which was put together by someone called Mira Rafalowicz. So I call her, I meet her, and she's a Mamelushnik. And she studied Yiddish, and she lived in Israel for a long time, and she was a brilliant speaker of Yiddish and a translator. Or she translated the D-book from Yiddish into English. And anyhow, so then I said, you have to teach me Yiddish. And she said, I don't do that. Yeah, she was a dramaturg and a translator. And then I said, well, you don't have a choice. There's no one around who can teach. So she started to teach me then once a week. I came from Rotterdam where I was living, and I came to Amsterdam once a week. And she prepared and from Weinreich and the grammar and.
That is impressive. Because you were trained as a classical singer.
Well, I left conservatory after 1.5 years. I was studying with the best vocal coach in the world, Margreet Honig, who really is the best. But I was very worried that I would lose something that could be a folk singer in some sense, or a chansonnière.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was worried. I knew I'm not born to embody the bel canto world. I'm born to make. I felt very strongly from the moment when I was coming into puberty. I think 13, 14 years old. I had a deep pain inside, and I felt something wants to be, something wants to be looked at and rebuild in some sense whatever I can do. And I didn't know yet exactly consciously, but Yiddish songs for me were this anchor to a world that needed to be rebuilt. And so that I would lose something that wasn't my place. So after 1.5 years, I spoke with my great friend and teacher. We're still friends, and it's 40 years ago. But I said to her, it's not my vocation. I can't embody Schubert. I have to. It's not my task in my life.
Yes, and it's interesting that
they thought that I would become a Baroque singer. I worked with Marie Leonard, for example. I did Baroque projects, and some people thought in the conservatory that I would become a second Emma Kirkby from the Baroque world.
Okay.
But I could do it, but it was not my passion. You have to be crazy and obsessed with something in order to become a professional. And I wasn't. I only was obsessed with Yiddish and Yiddish songs, being on my own, not knowing anyone. So.
And how did you feel the response in Holland? I mean, at the time, when did you really start? What year did you start? In the 80s, right?
I started to perform Yiddish songs when I was 14, in fact. And then I was slowly, doing it here and there like a child does. And I sang once for the radio with Heinz de Rosen. And then I was 18 and I really started to perform with guitar in places, sometimes Jewish places, sometimes the Dutch folk world. And the reception in the Dutch folk world was very warm. And very, they didn't know what it was because Yiddish, no one knew what Yiddish was. It was interesting because we didn't have a Yiddish culture in Holland. It was Hebrew. And so the folk world was interested and loved it. And the Jewish world was difficult because it really happened that after 3 songs, Yiddish songs, someone would raise the hand during a concert, imagine. Yes, Shura Lipovsky, could you please sing us Hebrew song? Because that's our language. Really.
I know all about it.
And I say, okay, I'll sing you one Hebrew song, which I love, of course, also. And then I'll go back to Yiddish, since that's, I think, what I'd like to do.
But it's interesting that now it has changed, and now it is the thing to do.
It's interesting. Yes. We have, as you know, there's been an enormous love for Yiddish culture and klezmer music starting in the beginning of the 80s, like end 70s. So then in Holland, we had a very wonderful person, Anneke van Dijk, who was the boss of Vredenburg, our great big classical theater in Utrecht. And she started to organize in the 80s a series of Yiddish and klezmer music. So she took a big risk. She did it in a classical hall. And I was invited many times there, and she created a wonderful, wonderful audience. It was, if you would have to compare it, maybe at that time, a sort of a left-wing intellectual, wonderful people, Jewish, non-Jewish, not important.
And it's also very, Shura, for me, a question is only that, you know, Holland in a way is a meeting place between Yiddish and Ladino, because you had also the Sephardic Jews, the Jews from Spain who came to the Netherlands in big numbers after the expulsion in 1492 and settled there. So you have like these two European traditions in the Netherlands, that was very much it was not nurtured in our childhood, I would think, but maybe now is taken care of in a better way. I don't know.
Well, Ladino, Judeo-Espanol, really, I mean, we have this fantastic synagogue. If you have been in Amsterdam, the Portuguese synagogue, it's a pearl. It's such a beautiful synagogue, you know, Sephardic shul. And my shul in The Hague was also built to that model, a Sephardic shul. Yes. That is, you know, largely covered. The Judeo-Espanol culture, however, rarely. Hannah Milner has also published a Sephardic songbook, and I am also a singer of this kind. Yes. I have done many concerts with Judeo-Espanol, but I don't speak it. So that's a language that I sing, and of course I understand when I sing it. But I love it. But in Paris, where I live partly, I have a Yiddish choir there. There is a small little, you know, like summer university happening with Judeo-Espanol, where they can learn the language again and so forth. So Paris is always ahead with all Jewish cultures. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that Ladino of Judeo-Espanol is part of the European culture in Amsterdam. The big difference with Paris is that the Sephardim were part of Amsterdam for a long time, so we are all Jews and we all, you know, went through the Shoah. Whereas in Paris, people speak of a mixed marriage when an Ashkenazic Jew is married to a Sephardic Jew. So to me, that was very strange. But I later started to understand why, because many Sephardic Jews came after the war to Paris, to France.
Ah, interesting.
That made it became a mixed marriage.
But the Netherlands, I mean, those who spoke Yiddish, they were mainly from Poland or from this part of, I mean, not from Breslau, Wrocław, but further from the settlements, the Pale of settlements, and those who moved to Holland for a better life. It was the majority of the Jews before the war, huh?
Yes, it was. Well, I think there were both groups were many. And yes, there were many people from Ashkenaz, from Pale Settlement, as you say. But since the culture in Holland was rather positive towards Jews, they quickly assimilated, in that sense that the language was quickly, people learned Dutch as their main language. So it was not like in Poland that people spoke and wrote and read only in Yiddish and, spoke Polish but didn't read it, for example. In Holland, it was very different. In Holland, there was a very quick assimilation in that sense. People remained Jewish and did their thing. And people from Spain and Portugal became Jewish once they came here. Of course, after the Inquisition, they had to become Christian. And then when they came to Amsterdam, they started to go back to their Jewish roots, in a sense.
Yeah. But I know that Amsterdam is called Makum.
Makum.
Yeah.
Makom.
Yeah.
It means the place.
It's Mokum. Yes. So yes, my town is called Mokum. And we had for very many years in Amsterdam traditionally a Jewish mayor. I don't know exactly how that came about, but yeah, very nice. And Amsterdam is a Jewish city.
Mein taer Menschele, a Sohne de Gorfans, mein prächtig Äußern, dein Mame wiegt dich ein. Ihr warme Herz alle klappt vor dir, mein Kind. Sie singt a Lieder, was wiegt dich wie der Wind. Ihr warme Herz alle klappt vor dir, mein Kind. Sie singt a Lieder, was wiegt dich wie der Wind. Tarita, dididida, dididida, ai dididida, ai dididida, ai dididida, ai dididida, tarai dididida, tidididida.
So this Yiddish journey of yours, it brought you also to the United States, didn't it?
Yes, it brought me all over the world. And from the moment I decided to not continue my conservatory with big pain in my heart because I loved the place and my great Honig, it was as if the wind took my ship, like, and it started to sail. And I was going to Oxford Summer University to study more Yiddish, and then I just sang in my room a little bit for myself, and then there was a knock on the door, and there was a young woman coming from the States and said, "Can I listen?" And I said, "Yes, you can listen." And then she said, "Oh, you should come to the States." And she was a very young girl, she was 23, but very strong mind, Marla Meriter. And she said, "Oh, you have to come." And then 4 months later, I was in the States, and she had organized a series of concerts in old age homes. And I went to the Glass Camp for the first time, this wonderful course with 600 people in the Catskills, in like a penicillin course of Yiddish culture, which had started. And there I met Zalman Lotek, the now director of the Yiddish Volksbühne. And we immediately clicked and started working together. Then later, I also met Jeff Warschauer, so we had our Lipovsky Mlotek Warschauer trio. And then later, I've been to Canada. Then later I met, in Krakow, in fact, I met Theodor Bickel. And we clicked immediately, and we started telling jokes to each other, and Rilke poems and whatever poems, and Tamara Brooks, and we started working together. So, and then So it's, and in Holland I've worked with wonderful people, and we,
Tell a little bit about who is Theodor Bickel, because many people we know who Theodor Bickel is, but our listeners don't know.
So he brought Yiddish songs in a very wonderful, sweet way to life. Very important figure for people to connect back to Yiddish culture. And he was an actor. He played a lot of times in Fiddler on the Roof. He was Tevye. Zillions of times he played that role. And he was also Captain von Trapp in the original Sound of Music. And Edelweiss was even written for him. And then later was taken in the film.
And when did you start working with him?
I met him in 2004 in Krakow, and then they were in my concert, Tamara and Theo. Tamara Brooks was a brilliant conductor and pianist. Oliver Scholem. And then immediately I invited Tamara to, because at that time I had been in Bosnia-Herzegovina, for a peace project with Musicians Without Borders, and I had met a little orchestra in Sarajevo, partly Croat and partly Bosnian Muslim, and they were called Mostar Sinfonietta, and I was so moved by them because they were the only ones who continued to make music during the war in Mostar, the place that was, bombarded and the bridge was, broken and bombed. And so I went to the management. Normally I'm not too, don't do these kinds of things, but when it's for peace, I get wings. So I went up to the management of the orchestra and said, would it be nice to have Croatic Catholics, Bosnian Muslims, and a Jewish singer? And shall we make a project? And I will organize it. And then he said, yes, I think that's nice. So I worked together with a Bosnian accordionist, Mary Maključa. I looked for Bosnian songs, real Bosnian songs. I looked for Sephardic songs, since Bosnia had a great Sephardic culture, very important. And Flori Jagoda was the one who wrote down.
In a way, Sarajevo is a little bit, when you talk about Europe and Jews, then Amsterdam and Sarajevo played a really important part. And also, Sarajevo also is a meeting place with different Jews, yes.
And it's so important that, and of course the Nazis have ended the Sephardic culture, and Flori Jagoda, who was really, in a sense, like the Hanna Milner in Holland, Flori Jagoda was it in Sarajevo. She composed also Ladino songs, so Sephardic songs herself. I met her a few times, and she was in my concert later when I was performing in the States. She was such a pearl also, who continued to be positive and create, and which is so impressive to me, that all these people, like the Meloteks in New York, like Hanna Milner, like Flori Jagoda, and so many people who have been, lost so many family members and so forth, continued this legacy of love and positivity. It's so impressive to me. Anyhow. So in Sarajevo, this orchestra said, yes, we will do it. And then I put together a program with Sephardic songs, Bosnian songs, and one classic piece for cello and orchestra, Kol Nidre. But I didn't know a conductor yet. I didn't know who was going to conduct. I thought, well, in the worst case, I will conduct. Who cares? It needs to happen. And then, so I organized it, I think, maybe a few months before I went in 2004 to Krakow. Then I meet in Poland, Theodor Bickel and Tamara Brooks. After the concert, Tamara tells me she's a conductor.
Oh,
so I asked her right away.
For those who don't know,
it's the wife of Theodor Bickel.
Tamara is the wife of Theodor.
Tamara Brooks was a conductor, pianist, and wife of Theodor Bickel. She died, unfortunately, in 2012, and then he remarried for the last few years of his life with Amy Ginsberg. But Tamara Brooks was his wife, and I met her, and we were very, very, very friendly. Very, very. I loved her very much. So where did
you perform with this orchestra in Bosnia? Everywhere, or?
No,
and
it's under the umbrella of Musicians Without Border.
Right?
Yes, because so musicians said, yes, do it, Shura, go for it. Then I put together the program. I went with Tamara to Mostar to rehearse with the orchestra. And then we had a concert in Amsterdam. Right after we had a drama here in Amsterdam, Theo van Gogh was killed, who was a journalist. And he was killed by a Muslim. And so the whole country was in mourning. And then the next week, on a Shabbos, it was Shabbos, Santa Claus was coming into the country, so there were a lot of children around, and it was the end of Ramadan, so the sugar feast for the Muslims, and we had this orchestra coming from the former Yugoslavia, where it was so much war, and they came, and we sang this program with Muslim songs, Jewish songs, and in this place in Utrecht where everybody was weeping, because in fact it was meant to console, in some sense, Bosnia-Herzegovina, but they came to console us in Holland with this project. And then in 2005, we made a tour through Poland with this project.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and we were in...
Did you perform in Wrocław?
In Wrocław?
Unfortunately not. It was only in Lublin, in Warsaw and Krakow. And the project was called Bridge to Peace. And and at that time, it was 60 years after the Second World War and 10 years after the Bosnian War. So, and it was so moving because some of the Bosnian people, or most of them, never had been in a synagogue, for example. So, and then they would play Kol Nidre, I would explain to them what Kol Nidre means, and I would sing their songs. And then we were in Poland. No, it was...
It's interesting, Shura, you also sing religious songs. I saw you did the Dudele, and now you're talking about Kol Nidre. How do you feel about singing the Yiddish, the religious songs? And you do probably sing them with a Yiddish pronunciation on the Hebrew.
Well, Dudele, I'm very close, I'm very linked to Hasidus in some sense. For me, it's very important, mystical Jewish thought. I teach also meditative courses with nigunim, with melodies without words, and Kabbalistic concepts about, how, and Hasidic stories too, because I think it's a very big, important source, anyhow, for me, to get, to remain positive and to get to know yourself in a different way and your perspective. So I work with that very much daily. It's my daily life. I'm also very attached to the Bundist tradition of, socialism and helping people to continue with art and for all workers. So for me, I try to embody both sides.
I just have to add that Bundist is a social, the Jewish social movement that was very popular also in Poland before the war. and started here. So just for those who don't know.
But Bund, I see, is
very much alive among many Yiddish artists. Many Yiddish artists can relate to Bund, this way of being Jewish, not giving up your identity, but being at the same time international and open-minded and a socialist in a way. Mm-hmm.
I have even, recently I spoke on the Dutch national radio about Bundism, saying that, you know, the importance of this movement is that they thought that the promised land should be in the here and now, should be where we are together, here and now, share our cultures and share culture of the other, and make sure everybody lives in a just way. I relate to that very much.
And I have to add something that Marek Edelman, who was one of the who was so well known in Poland, who was even fighting in solidarity and fighting communism, was one of the main freedom fighters in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, and he was a Bundist. So so it meant that he saw his country as Poland, not to as have to go to another country to be able to be Jewish or to be who he is.
And it's funny
so
because we sit now in
the Netherlands, and I sit here in Wrocław, and we kind of feel that
we can be at home where we are at the moment, like you were saying,
and make friends with people from different cultures and share. You know, I think that Bundism always had a pedagogical inclination that you should. I mean, for example, here in Amsterdam, all the real important social changes were done by Jews. Oh
well, yes, because people are very much about engaging themselves socially and making life better all the time.
It is,
trying to make
and I have to say, I'm always so impressed that we haven't. I mean, that there's something continuing to always want to construct and to build and to make better, to do tikkun olam and make the world a better place, as opposed to, you know, we could have had a different reaction to the Holocaust and to Shoah. I mean, in a sense, but you know, some people say, well, you know, people sometimes need to do terrible things and, you know, do terrorist attacks because they suffered such and such, or this and that, or poverty, or they have been suppressed. I'm sorry, the Jewish people do have every right to start bombing the whole world, but they don't. And I think and people hardly speak about that after the war, Jews always contributed to a better place, and without being chauvinist, because I hate chauvinism, but sometimes it needs to be said that.
I think it's our parents' generation that they didn't. I cannot talk for everybody, but at least I grew up in a second generation of the Holocaust. I am myself, and my parents, they didn't have hate to anybody. I didn't grow up with hate.
Which is like a central thing. And that's why in war...
It's very strange because they are victims. Very often I see actually people who are not victims are much more hateful and want to revenge than people who really suffered.
Yes, you move me so much. We're sisters. It's so... Yeah.
Yes, I think it was...
When life has been so far down, you just want to see light. You just want it to be better, and every day it's better. You enjoy it. You know how to enjoy life. It was a generation who, if they wouldn't enjoy the life, they would fall apart. There's because today, after the pandemic, people fall apart mostly mentally. How do we manage mentally to survive this time? it is the most important to be strong inside, believe in a better time. This will be over soon. Soon we will have a better day and we will meet properly. We will do nice concerts again. And I think this, at least I take this in every religion or whenever belief you have, it exists. You just have to take the best out of it. And
oh mine. I mean, you're speaking my deepest. Oh mine. And you know, I wrote a few songs that are all about how to go from here with the Corona things, and because I felt that writing new songs helped me. And I wanted to make joyful as well. So that's why I wrote this song
you
about
made the song Ikar, and I will open our program with it. It's fantastic.
Oh, nice.
That's great.
And the song of the, oh, nice. And you like the song of the Levonne, the who is complaining that she's forgotten as soon as the sun starts shining, and then and then finally, you know, the stars tell her, don't complain, you're beautiful, and then start shining again. So it's all inspired from Corona time, where what shall we do if we disappear?
It's really nice.
Yeah, how can we do well? Yeah.
We won't. We just have to continue to sing, Shura. That's the only remedy.
Yes.
Verdeckt ihr Schmeichel, wie bald entbleckt die Sonne ihr Schein. Keiner will doch nicht verschwinden oder gar unnützlich sein. Wenn sie still in ihr kleinen Winkel, wo kein Mensch erwischt der Tränen. Etwas sagt sie, ist mehr treurig als silbrige Licht, ist mein Bagger. Tori, 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 In der Nacht bin ich der Edes, was vielleicht dem Paulus schier. Kommt die Sonne als Mann vergessen, als hebt sich an mit mir. Tori, 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 sie weiter mit ihr Klagen zu die Sternen weit und kalt. Wie die Sonne kommt sie verjagen, unwischt aus ihrer Blassgestalt. Entfern ihr die weite Stern, sei nicht treurig, du bist greis. Keiner wird dich nicht vergessen, weil du sest doch prächtig. Tari tori, tari tori, 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 tori. Wir aber sind klein und nichtig und fahren oft weg in Stäub. Keiner rennt, wenn wir verschwinden, und keiner singt uns nicht kein Leub. Doch habt sich euch von Hemd und Straden mit dein silbernen Korn im Rhein und wisch ab bis seinen kleinen Nistig und fahren oft da weg in Stäub. Keiner weint, wenn wir verschwinden, und keiner singt uns nicht kein Leib. Doch hat sich auf und hebt uns tragen mit dein Silberkorn im Rad. Und wisch ab bis deine Tränen und gedenk dein silbernen Schwan. Toni, 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 Toni,
Absolutely, and for me, it's become writing new Yiddish songs by now. By now I've
I'm
25.
so impressed about it, that you write in Yiddish, not only melody, but also your own poetry. That's beautiful. Really.
Thank you. Yes.
But tell me, yeah, sorry.
It's so I don't know. I had started writing my own texts since 2012. Hanam Lotek once, you know, the one who published all the books in New York, once said to me, Shura, this is the time that you start to write your own songs. And then at that time, I said, no way, because there's so many songs I haven't sung yet. No way. But she, in some sense, I think she has dropped a little seed in my heart. Weiter weg sind deine Sterne, gesehen hab ich dein weiße Hand, Meure dich verjagt die Winden, hat mir gewiesen deine Hand. That's a commentary on Unter deine weiße Sterne von Sutzkevel. And in this song, I say, well, you know, since Sutzkevel said, I don't know, I don't see you, God, where are you? I want your white hand to have, that my tears can be consoled in your white hand. But you're not there. I'm chased by ghosts. And I wrote a response to that song saying, despite the fact that I'm far away from your stars, I did see your white hand, and I know you're there. And that was the first song I wrote.
Beautiful.
And
tell me a little bit about you do a lot of teaching, because I see you are everywhere and teaching all the kind of seminars that are around. You must have lots of students. And because of you, many people sing Yiddish. It's fantastic. Because it's from the United States to Canada to England to... Can you tell me a little bit about your teaching and how you feel about that?
Yes, so part of the teaching I just said is this meditative voice, which I've started to develop a few years ago, which is nigunim, so melodies without words, Kabbalistic and Hasidic teachings, and Yiddish songs. And the Yiddish songs then are related to a theme that I think is important. So it's then, you know, what means a source, or what means how bait, or what means a house, or what means your own inner calling, what means to anyhow. That are themes that I work and teach recent years. And before that, I've always taught Yiddish song repertoire, and so to many kinds of groups in Europe, mostly non-Jewish, in the States and in Canada and in England, mostly Jewish people. And in France, of course, I have since 15 years a choir in France, in Maison de la Culture Yiddish. I travel once a month to Paris for the choir. And I have a choir in Holland, which is all now not, because of Corona, of course, nothing happens. And I've worked for a long time from the beginning of the 90s, twice a month in Germany. Different, teaching weekends with Yiddish songs, Hasidic stories, movement, introspection, sort of meditative, in some sense what Magidim would do in the time of the Baal Shem Tov, the master of the good name who started the Hasidic movement in Eastern Europe and in Podolia. My very favorite movement when it comes to ethics and joy and Yiddishkeit. And I'm not an Orthodox person, but I love the stories and I love the ethics in a sense, and that love is more important than doing everything correctly and so forth and so forth. So I've been teaching that once a month, a whole weekend in Germany, to non-Jewish people. I have had very deep and, complicated things happen because people came because they were curious. They came out of whatever families with mostly Nazi background. And then they thought, oh, well, there's a Jewish person teaching Yiddishkeit and mysticism and so forth. So I would like to go and see what this is about. And mostly what happened, the first 7, like from the 1990s till 97, 8, was that I started on Friday night doing Shabbos and telling about it and singing and and then mostly towards the end of Saturday afternoon, there would be a wall of a silence or a sort of wall of sadness that would grow in the group. And then I would stop. It was sort of always, all the weekends happened like that, the first years. Then about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I stopped teaching and I said, I feel there's sadness in the group. I think we should, because I never mentioned the Shoah. I was just teaching the beauty, the life and lullabies or love songs and Hasidic stories about wisdom and so forth. And then 4 o'clock, you felt there was this wall. I had to stop. And then I said, you understand that this is the culture that has been killed. And I then started to sing some songs from the ghetto time and so forth. And then everybody started weeping.
Wow.
And I would, weep with them. And then I started to slowly change into songs about peace and that every human being is like a pearl, Schnere, le Perle, le Gilderne von. And Mashiach will come in. And then, we talked a little bit and people, remained silent for hours and went their own way. And then on Sunday morning, we could start to work again. And then it was a different atmosphere.
Beautiful. Yes, it is an encounter between and a repairing.
Trying to repair. It's so much been our job.
I mean, our generation to do those encounters. I mean, I was taught not to go to Germany and I live in Poland, so, but it is a lot of also barriers we have to go across.
To cross, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
And the only thing is that for me in Poland, I mean, I always felt that I'm blessed with my profession, that I am a singer and that I'm a peace worker, because on this journey, I have met so many beautiful people that has helped my soul to heal. So you're also helped by breaking the images of the enemy and breaking, the impulse of all the Germans or all the Poles or all the Israelis or all the whatever, in whatever way, or all the Americans or all the Russians or all the Chinese, because there are so many things today also that, things are very difficult, or all the Syrians. Nothing is all. There's no all. There are individuals and there's culture. And then the most important thing is to break the image of all and meet one person. And from that one person, your wall might break. And
it's beautiful.
I have to say, but I have to tell you honestly that my mother was the greatest tzaddik who was so not hating and so deeply convinced that we need to repair the world, that she helped in a way to make me who I am now in this way. She thought, how am I ever going to tell Miriam, my sister, and Shura about the Shoah? And how am I going to avoid that they will be hating forever everything that's German and so forth? What can I do? So she decided that we would go each year in the summer vacation from the moment I was 5 years old to a place, same place in Austria. And she was hoping that I would first meet a person who speaks German and love that person before I hear about the war. And that happened. There was a woman, Frau Kleindienst, who was owning a big garden, and she would grow fruit and vegetables and so forth. And we would play all the time in her garden, and we would love her so much that when we would go back to Holland, I would be homesick for her. So I spoke German from the moment when I was 6 years old, fluent. And then much later, my mother told me. So that's the basis of my piecework.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I tell you, we had the German nannies to take care of us as children in Norway. I never knew why my father wanted German nannies.
And did you have a good relationship with them?
Yes, I think it was important for him that we should have a relationship with somebody who spoke German, just like your mother.
Exactly.
And then until one of them had her boyfriend visiting.
And he had a Hakenkreuz tattooed on his arm. And then my mother said, enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so nice to talk to you, Shura. We could talk and talk. And this was a very nice encounter. I'm looking forward to meet you in real life. And
yes,
we
will.
Very much. Yes, we will. And
we will, absolutely.
You know, the synagogue in Wrocław is here waiting for you.
Yes.
You sang in the Stork synagogue before. You have been singing here.
No, I didn't.
Oh, really? Oh.
I think I know.
So,
I've been in Poland. I've been in many places, in Bydgoszcz and in Poznan and in Lublin, Warsaw, of course, and Poznan and so forth. But no, not. I have a very dear friend who lives in Wrocław, Ula. She's a very dear friend. I studied with her in London, and yeah. No, I would love to.
So
and we're
your second name is Lipovsky, so you must come from Polish Jewish background. No?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my father was born in Kharkov, in fact, in Ukraine. Yes. But yes, it must be some faraway Polish.
Absolutely.
Polish root. Yeah.
I will say B'Shana Haba Bewrocławia.
It was good to talk to you, and stay healthy, and see you soon.
Yes, you too, and continue all the fantastic work you're doing, and keep up the flame of exactly the same flame that we've been talking about, building and spreading the love for the culture and for people, and that's the only thing that will survive and give us hope and perspective in our lives. I think it's so important to build these kinds of bridges, and for me, it's very important to have met you over this because it gives me
the same here too.
So I'm glad that our audience will meet you now, first through the internet and hopefully also live. So thank you, Shura. Bye.
Thank you. Bleib gesund.
Sei gesund.
Der Iker bist doch du, og Iker bleib von Stuhl. Der Iker er verblondet, der sucht dich in Abibu. Iker bist doch du, og Iker bleib von Stuhl. Der Iker er verblondet, der sucht dich in Abibu. Wandern in Nichtigkeit, wandern sich in Wichtigkeit, suchen sich in Deutlichkeit. Der Iker ist, der Iker ist, der Iker aber bleibt. Iker bist doch du, Iker bleib von Stuhl. Der Iker er verblondet, der sucht dich in Abibu. Iker bist doch du, Iker bleib von Stuhl. Der Iker er verblondet, der sucht dich in Abibu. In wem gefielen sich allein und wennt noch jene Zeit, gefindt man kämen gut verstehen, bloß die Vergangenheit. Iker bist doch du, Iker bleib von Stuhl. Der Iker er verblondet, der sucht dich in Abibu. Iker bist doch du, Iker bleib von Stuhl. Der Iker er verblondet, der sucht dich in Abibu. Himmel ze Leute, ze Acker von Gott, der ist gesucht, ze haben dich Gott, sonnige Felder, ze decken dich zu, allein dein Korn und wiegen zu Ruhe, sonnige Felder, ze decken dich zu, allein dein Korn und wiegen zu Ruhe. Der Iker ist, der Iker ist, der Iker ist, der Iker ist, der Iker. Iker bist doch du, Iker bleib von Stuhl. Der Iker er verblondet, der sucht dich in Abibu. Iker bist doch du, Iker bleib von Stuhl. Der Iker er verblondet, der sucht dich in Abibu. Iker ist doch Neuigkeit, Iker sucht euch sich. Iker ist doch Neuigkeit, der Iker sucht euch sich. Wir kämen in der Finsternis, gefielen sich ohne dich. Iker bist doch du, Iker bleib von Stuhl. Der Iker er verblondet, der sucht dich in Abibu. Iker bist doch du, Iker bleib von Stuhl. Der Iker er verblondet, der sucht dich in Abibu. Iker bist doch du, Iker bleib von Stuhl. Der Iker er verblondet, der sucht dich in Abibu. Iker bist doch du, Iker bleib von Stuhl. Der Iker er verblondet, der sucht dich in Abibu. Iker bist doch du, Iker bleib von Stuhl. Der Iker er verblondet, der sucht dich in Abibu. Iker bist doch du, Iker bleib von Stuhl. Der Iker er verblondet, der sucht dich in Abibu.